Okay, let's start. Hi semuanya, welcome to GK Plug and Play event. I'm Fortune Community and Partnership Manager from GK Plug and Play. Today, GK Plug and Play in collaboration with ID and Next Leader will share about what should we do during the COVID-19 crisis. I believe you will get in-depth knowledge from our speaker today. So the rundown of today, we have 3 sessions of this event. First, we have an Aaron Neo, Director of GK Plug and Play. He will bring the keynote as an opening. Second, we have Haikal Siregar, Managing Director and Partner at the Boston Consulting Group. He will share about industry and market outlook during pandemic. And last, we have panel discussion to talk about tips and tricks to face the crisis era in for this time. With our insightful speakers, Pak Paulus Bambang from the Astra International. The second, Tayo Guritno, CEO and co-founder at Inspigo. Vero Veriska, Worldwide Senior Program Lead at Microsoft. And also our moderator, Halim Hartono, Director at GK Plug and Play. So guys, please stay tuned in this channel till the end of this event. For the rules of this event, if you have any question, please drop your question in the chat box. You can see the comment box in your YouTube channel. And so let's start. Aaron, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Fortune, for the very enthusiastic opening. Yeah, I think we can go straight into the presentation.
Okay, let's go. Let me prepare your slide.
Good morning, everyone. Very excited to be here. I think I want to thank ID and Next Leader for hosting this event with us, co-hosting it with us. As Fortune mentioned, we have a very distinguished list of speakers today, and we're very excited to share some knowledge. I think the key component of what's going on in the market right now is that there is so much uncertainty, there is so much worry, and so the best thing to do is to be able to share as much information as possible so that everyone in our ecosystem can make informed decisions. So today, before all the distinguished guests come ahead, I'm just going to talk a bit about GK Plug and Play, what we are, and our ecosystem. Once I do explain that, it'll make sense because I'll be sharing the meat of my presentation will be about the responses. Our response, our startup response, VC's response, and corporate responses. So this will help give you an idea of what insights and best practices we've gathered from talking to our ecosystem partners, doing some analysis and research. And from there, I'm going to go on and close the presentation with Outlook. So Outlook is not about me predicting what's going to happen because no one knows what's going to happen, but it was just some commonalities across startups Yes. So what does that mean? The Ultimate Innovation Platform our Ultimate Innovation Platform consists of 3 core pillars: accelerator, corporate, and venture capital. So I think at our very start, we were a venture capital firm. Our founder, Saeed, was a very active angel investor in the mid to late 90s. And he made some investments that were very profitable, such as Dropbox, PayPal. And till date, we're still a very active VC. I think last year we made over 220 investments globally. Indonesia itself, we have made over 22 investments, and we're still looking to invest. And we also do like to co-invest with other VCs too, because that gives a lot more connection, synergies. When investing, we saw an opportunity or a need from the startups, which is a lot of our startup companies needed help in really expediting and accelerating their growth. And that's why we started the Accelerator program. To date, today we run over 50 programs in 14 countries in 30 cities. And the core objective of this program is really to enable and foster collaboration between the startup and corporations, and also provide the mentorship, connections to other VCs, and connections to governments so that they're in line with regulations and they do understand all that's happening in the market. Which brings me about to our third and last pillar, which is corporate innovations. We partner with the biggest corporate globally, over 300. And how we engage with them is that we help them fulfill their tech interests or help them to find solutions, startup solutions for their problem statements. So essentially, what we're trying to do here is to create an ecosystem where everyone, all the stakeholders, can build and foster mutually beneficial relationships. At its core, obviously, is startups. And the value we bring to startups outside of investment is that there's a lot of noise in the market, especially in Indonesia, right? A lot of startups doing the same thing. So big corporations, when they want to engage with startups, they don't know who to choose. So what we bring about for the startup is credibility. So we can tell the corporate that, hey, this startup has gone through our program, or hey, we've vetted this startup's solution, and whatever they're saying is true, and their solution can be used by you. For the corporates, actually, what we found is that startups provide a very good framework for innovation. So startups enable big corporations, traditional corporations, to implement the urgency and the agility that's very known for in startups into their big corporates in a very low risk, high reward kind of manner through pilot projects, POCs. And what we find is that through these collaborations, oftentimes both parties end up getting more than if they were to do it themselves. So it's greater than the sum of its parts. We engage with the government for regulations and also to understand what is going to be happening in the market next. VCs, because we like to co-invest. Also, we like to enable our portfolio companies to raise additional rounds after we've invested in them. So we engage with all the leading VCs in all the markets we're in. And universities, I think we are engaged with all the best universities globally in every market that we're in. Indonesia itself, we're engaged with all the best universities to help them with their incubator program. One, it shows us what is trending among the brightest minds in the university level. And two, it also gives us an opportunity to give back and really build and enhance the skills of the ecosystem. So I think now that I've talked about our ecosystem and prefaced it, I do want to touch a bit about what's happening with COVID, right? I think Masaikawa is going to talk more about this, the market and what's going on. But it's no doubt that everyone knows here that the COVID-19 situation or crisis has really had a great impact globally and in Indonesia. And I just wanted to preface our responses by discussing a few things so that our responses will make more sense. So one, what we do know for sure is that there will be cascading impact across all industries. So this recession or this crisis will hit you no matter what industry you're in. It could be like you're not feeling the effects right now, but we guarantee that there will be an effect to you within the next few months. And two, historically, average recession is about 12 months, but we are advising all our companies and all our partners to plan for 24 months because we're not sure about what kind of recovery this will be. Either a V-shaped recovery where it bounces back right away, a U-shaped recovery where the bottom is a little longer, or an L-shape where the bottom is the new normal. So just to preface a bit, I think you'll get a lot more of this in the subsequent presentations, but there I'm going to jump into what we have done. So I think we've responded very quickly. I think right when we saw the impact of COVID happening, we really internally discussed what we needed to, created a plan really quickly, and engage with our ecosystem right away, all the stakeholders, right? The three core components with corporates. With our corporate partners, we are becoming even more proactive in approaching them, providing them with the latest innovation to help cope with the current circumstances. I think on the global level, we've done several webinars which showcase startups that are trying to provide solutions to help with some of the challenges that COVID is bringing up. We've brought the leading solutions from the US, Europe, and showcased them with the idea that we wanted all our corporate partners to be able to see what's out there in the market, even if it's not available in their current market, and to create a plan where they can actually engage with these startups and leverage their technology to help them. Two, with our ecosystem, we're ramping up activities. I think previously we used to do about 2 events a month. Now with COVID and leveraging technology, we are trying to do 1 event a week or more even. So I think an example is this event today. As I mentioned earlier, the idea is to share as much information as possible. In this current state, right, with the panic and the worry that's in the market, what's core is information and relevant, accurate information so that people can make informed decisions. I think what the COVID situation has brought to light is that there is a new reality and we all have to formulate plans and formulate plans well and quickly and accurately in order to survive or even thrive. So information is key in this. So we're trying to disseminate as much knowledge as possible. And with startups, a couple things on the investments front. We are still actively looking for investments. We still have some money set aside to make some investments. So even with the situation happening, we're still actively doing due diligence. We're still sourcing startups. But a lot more of our time is actually focused on portfolio management. What does this mean? It's basically just helping out companies that we have already invested in. And you would think like intuitively, we're helping out companies that are not doing that well. But actually, we're helping out all companies. So we have one company that's doing amazingly well, and they need help in terms of, how to keep up with demand, how to reallocate resources, how to hire the best talent now that there's some available talent in the market that wouldn't otherwise be available. And obviously, with the ones that are not doing as well, we're helping them with scenario planning, business planning, BCP, and really trying to help them flesh out their ideas and act as a additional co-founder to them. So our response has been quite immediate, but I think what's also interesting is that we've been able to gather the responses of everyone else in our ecosystem. So next, I'm going to talk about startups, and this is these 5 things, right? Is what we have done and analyzed through research, and also from insights we've gathered from talking to our startups, and also a lot of the other startups in the market and other people in our ecosystem. I think these 5 are quite common and quite relatable and applicable to startups across all industries. So I think 1, it's key that you adapt quickly and act decisively, right? So I'm going to touch upon each of this in the subsequent slides. So 2, in order to act decisively, you need to map out all scenarios, right? So in order to be able to get all the information and to be able to make an informed decision. 3, take a very hard look at your financials. So I think this is no time to be wishy-washy about spending. You really, really have to take a hard look at financials. 4, constantly analyze the market for changes. And 5 is very key. Be realistic, but maintain hope, because hope is what gets people through crisis. This has been a fact throughout humanity. So being realistic is key. So if you're only hopeful and you're not realistic, it's not going to work. And if you're only realistic and not hopeful, it's not going to work. It's finding that balance, and really, as a leader of your startup, portraying that, being grounded in reality, but also having the ability to inspire hope so that people can look up to you. So 1, adapt quickly and act decisively. A key thing to note here is that there's a new normal now. So the plan you had 1 month ago, 2 months ago, that you just came up with, you can throw that out the window, because right now you need to create a plan for now, because the situation is changing and changing so fast. There's so much uncertainty that variance at its all-time high. So we really, really need to do it fast and do it as soon as possible. And really, what's here, if acting decisively, that in every startup you need to have a special task force, and the task force should include CEO, the COO, a legal person, and an HR person, and they should be constantly meeting and evaluating ideas on execution plans and whether all risks have been considered and whether it's workable or not. So in mapping out those plans, it leads me to number 2, which is mapping out all scenarios. You can act decisively is to map out all scenarios for making a decision, because the time to make a decision now is shorter than ever. The key is able to map out scenarios. There are a lot of great resources online about frameworks that I encourage. So basically, you need to plan for the best case, which is from a revenue, cost, and manpower side. So right, best revenue is cost is staying the same, and manpower all motivated. So business as usual. That's your best case. Then plan for the worst case too. Let's say revenue is down to 10%, cost is up to 80%, and manpower morale is down. And then split the difference and plan for a scenario in the middle. And through each of it, plan out what you're going to do if this scenario happens, what you're going to do if this scenario happens, and what you're going to do if the best case scenario happens. And that way, With all this information, you can make a good decision. Third, I think very important, take a very hard look at your financials. Uh, in times of uncertainty, in times of crisis, cash equals insurance, right? The more cash you have, the more you're able to deal with uncertainty or things that will happen to you. So try to get 24-month runway. We're telling all our startups to plan for 24 months. And really, when you're analyzing your financials, don't take anything off the table. Scrutinize everything. Make sure that everything, every line item in your financial statement is accounted for, and there's a reason you're spending that money. So I think a very good thought process for this is that imagine 18 months from now, right? And your company is out of cash. What are the top 5 things you wish you hadn't spent money on? Yeah, do that. That's a very good way of looking and thinking about how you can save money. And the caveat here is, it's very important here. It's not about just reducing costs for the sake of reducing costs. You need to keep the core aspects of your business functioning. So if you cut off your core aspects and you're just saying, oh, I'm going to survive, then when the market does recover, because there is going to be an end, a rebound, you're not going to be in position to grow. So basically, you're hampering yourself there. So taking a look at financials is very, very tricky in that sense. You have to really find a way to reduce your costs, but make sure they're not non-essential costs that will not adversely affect your business right now and how it can rebound in the future. Point four is also very important. I think it's something that we found that is most lacking in startups we've talked to. I think as a startup, you need to be constantly analyzing the market for changes, because a lot of times the startups we talk to, they do the first two well, right? They create a plan, they act decisively, and then they're just focused on running their day to day. So they're just focused in like making sure the startup is okay, executing operations, but they need to be cognizant of what's happening in the market daily, weekly, and adapt their plans. Because of the uncertainty, because we don't really know when the end is going to come, there's a lot of variance. So things can change daily. So a key thing that we are telling our companies is that move from quarterly planning to weekly planning. And if weekly planning doesn't make sense, maybe daily even makes sense in some cases. The key is that someone in the company, ideally the CEO, COO, has to be really tuned into what is happening in the market and really able to relay the information to the company in the way of an adaptation to the business plan. And 5, I mentioned as the most important, be realistic but maintain hope. I think in times of uncertainty, employees are worried naturally, right? So they need someone to look up to. In times of crisis, people always look for someone to turn to. So if you're able to be that person that people turn to and be inspired from, then it will do wonders for how your company is able to perform and get through this crisis. So the key things here is communicate what the new reality is to the company and be transparent. Don't lie to them and say, hey, we're okay if things are not going okay, right? You do have to be honest and say, yeah, our sales are going to be down 30% this month. And next month, we're looking at 50%. And it's okay to say you don't know what's going to happen in the future because no one can predict the future. But if you're able to say that, but no matter what happens, I already have a plan in place going forward, and I can make sure that we'll do our best to get through this, that will give people that inspiration, that hope, and their worries will be alleviated a bit, and they'll turn that worry to hope and inspiration and really move forward with you. And that way you're able to gather people together. So that's also very important. Now that we talk a bit about startups, I'm going to talk a bit about the VC responses. I think VCs, like any industry, has been affected by the current situation. And so today I'm just going to touch upon a couple new realities for the VC space that we found. Just 4 things. One, there's going to be less funds available in the market. This is a certainty because of several factors that I'll discuss later. 2, because there are less funds in the market, there's going to be a higher bar for investment. Uh, VCs will get to be more selective because there's less money in the market. And 2, investors will be more risk adverse. So they'll scrutinize everything more when they're looking at the investment documents. They'll ask the questions. And to get a yes from I want to invest in this company will just be naturally higher. Three, there'll be a reevaluation of investment mandates across the board. I think a few VCs will tweak their investment mandate to look at verticals that they previously didn't look at, things that are trending. And also, there might be specific initiatives related to COVID-19 that VCs will look to run and push. I think on our side, actually, PNP Global is launching a COVID-19 accelerator. The purpose of this accelerator is to accelerate startups that are working on solutions to help address material challenges created by the COVID-19 crisis, and really lending our support to really help them expedite their growth and really be able to push out solutions into the market as soon as possible. We will also be looking to make investments through that accelerator. And four, as I mentioned earlier, portfolio management will take up more of their time. So I think I'm going to go through each one a little bit one by one. Less funds in the market. So why less funds in the market? So one, there's so much uncertainty, right? And so a lot of VCs will look at it and say, hey, I think we'll just wait it out and see what happens. Because the situation that a VC doesn't want to be in is them investing in a company now, and the company just keeps burning cash because the COVID situation does not get better. And what they end up doing is just prolonging a startup's demise. So the startup was supposed to fail anyways, and the VC just putting that money in, and it just ends up failing. So there's going to be some VCs that will look to be freezing the deployment of capital. Two, on the LP side, limited partners of VCs, basically VCs investors, the money that VCs fundraise from. Some LPs will be looking to recoup their investments, or they would renege on their commitments. So overall, there's just going to be less money in the market for sure. Two, high bar for investments. I think, as I mentioned earlier, naturally, supply and demand with less money, then VCs are able to scrutinize more. They'll get to pick the best of the best investment. So there's going to be a higher bar for investments. And also in general, as a whole, throughout the whole economy, the risk appetite for investors will be significantly lower. So investment bar will be a lot higher. So whatever you were trying to raise at previously with certain traction and certain parameters, you might have to reevaluate and see if those parameters still make sense in this current market. Best way to do this is to talk to as many people as possible, because like whatever valuation multiplier and stuff that was applicable for the market last year will not be applicable anymore this year. Three, so I touched briefly upon what PNP is doing in terms of investment mandate. Another thing that VCs might be doing is looking at verticals that they would otherwise not be interested in. I think this will probably relate to verticals that are more trending in the market right now, like telehealth, FMCG enablers, anything D2C, direct to consumer, that will look to grow in this crisis. And four, portfolio management will take up more of their time. I think this is for sure. A lot of VCs will be helping out their companies, especially VCs that are in their stage of having already invested a lot of their funds. A lot of their efforts will be making sure that their portfolio companies stay alive. They allocate as much resources as possible. And an important thing, and actually this relates to what I was talking about being cognizant of the market changes, right? For VCs, especially the leading VCs, they will act as the person that will provide their portfolio companies with market changes and what is going to happen next. So they'll be talking to all their portfolio companies and saying, hey, it's great that you guys are executing your plan right now. And it's great that operations are going very smoothly. But keep note of this. I think this will change. I think this was this. Based on our research, I think certain things should be added to your business plan as initiatives that you should be pursuing. So the VC will act like someone that will be telling them about the market outlook and acting as a sounding board for their next steps going forward. I think this is a good time for me to talk about a couple of our portfolio companies. I'll give two case studies. One of a VC of a company, a startup that we invested in at the very early stage, who is now doing very well. They're an agri-tech e-grocer, and they recently reached out to us and said, "Hey, because we initially reached out to more of companies that we thought would struggle. They reached out to us and said, "Hey, we need some support here. We're getting so much demand, and we don't know what to do." So what we helped them do is like really think through all the resources they had in their company and how to reallocate these resources so that we can fulfill demand first. And on the other side, we're also helping them with hiring a lot. With the layoffs that are being announced in the market, there is a lot of talent available that otherwise would not be available. So we're also trying to reach out to these people and telling them that there are companies or startups that are looking to hire even in this situation, and they'd be a great fit. And on the other end of the spectrum, one of our portfolio companies is a loyalty program portfolio company, and obviously they are not doing as well because a lot of their clients or customers are F&B companies and hospitality companies. And with them, what we've done is that they've come up with a lot of plans, a lot of scenarios, and we've acted as a sounding board for them to flesh out their ideas. So making sure that this idea is okay, this idea is not okay. The goal here is to help them not be the one to tell them what to do. The goal with portfolio management is to act as someone else to objectively look at ideas from founders and provide a view that is outside what they usually see, because a lot of times startups are very focused on what they're doing, their industry, so their mindset or their line of sight might be quite narrow. So in portfolio management, what we're trying to do is to give them a bigger scope so that they can make the best decision possible. I think I touched upon startups, response strategy, VCs. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about corporate response strategy. So I think these corporates, we have gathered these insights from talking to our corporate partners, potential corporate partners, and other people in our ecosystem, the government, our mentor network. So I think, as any other industry, corporations are also deeply impacted, but in a slightly different way than startups and VCs. So I think these are several steps that some of the most forward-looking leading corporations are taking, and we wanted to share that with you today. One, invest in technology and infrastructure. Two, formulate a strategy uh, for internal communications, and then formulating a strategy for external communication too. And then last but not least is to implement external solutions that can help. I'll touch upon these in greater detail. One, investment in technology, right? So what this means is, right, all the corporations, what they're doing is they're spending a lot of time making sure that their infrastructure is ready to enable personnel to collaborate effectively remotely. So I think this is very important because as big corporations, due to the COVID-19 crisis, there's already a lot of challenges that you have to be facing in your core business. So you don't want the productivity or the ability to work efficiently among your workforce to be one of the things you're worried about. So making sure you invest in the right technology and infrastructure so that working remotely will not materially affect the productivity or the efficiency of your workforce is very, very important. Two, formulating an internal communication strategy. So I think this is pretty similar to what I discussed about startups and talking to their employees, but a little bit different. So I think internally, big corporations might be less transparent, but their employees might be a little less worried because big corporations are built in a way that they have contingency plans in place, especially the ones that are publicly listed. They have plans in place to deal with a crisis, right? But still, there's still uncertainty. So a lot of employees might be thinking, oh, will there be layoffs? Will our workplace be changed? So it's also very important, as much as possible, to be transparent in a big corporation. Uh, Letting worry and uncertainty seep into your workplace culture will be detrimental to the productivity and overall impact that your workforce can provide to your corporation. Along those lines, also important, more important than ever, to form an external communication strategy, right? This is very much more important as a corporation than it is for a startup, because effective communication during a crisis is key for big corporations, right? To maintain customer trust, to retain market stability. And so big companies, big corporations should be coming up with a plan, coming up with a PR strategy or a communication plan to bring about uh, a sense of comfort with their customers or trust, leverage all the technologies possible. But you got to make sure all these communications have been fleshed through properly, scripted, because now more than ever, people are turning to media or social media to look for messages. So whatever you are portraying to the media will be taken in by more people than ever now. So it's very important to craft that story well, craft that communication strategy well. And four is the most important thing. Four is something that I do really want to stress upon from our learnings from talking to a lot of corporations, both globally and in Indonesia. Um, as much as possible, if the solution makes sense, corporations should be looking to implement external solutions. The question of build and buy should just be buy now, buy, because time is of the essence now, because challenges need to be overcome as soon as possible. So corporates should look and be more open to utilize external solutions as much as possible. They should actively source, evaluate, engage with all the available solutions to solve one of their issues, and then really try and implement them as soon as possible. I know there's some challenges with making sure that the solution that you're looking at is vetted and is credible. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can seek help outside to really implement these solutions. I think something that I want to touch upon here is that for one of our partners in Indonesia itself, actually, they have recently talked to us about a couple problems that they're having. So a problem that they're having is they need a solution where they are able to ensure that their employees at a mining site are adhering to social distancing rules. So that means that they want to make sure that remotely they're able to see on a high level everyone in their mining site is maintaining that 1 meter difference. So we actually found some solutions in terms of asset tracking, people tracking using wearables to push to them to evaluate solutions that are already vetted, that are already ready to be used, and they're currently going to make a decision of which one to use. Another example is that they're also trying to find solutions. This is a little bit more complex. They're trying to find a solution to mitigate the loss of productivity from the mandatory 14-day quarantine period that's enforced for employees that are coming back from vacation. So right now we're actually in the midst of discussing with them and discussing with our global PNP team to find solutions that can help mitigate this. And this is very interesting to us because the solutions can range from a variety of industries and verticals. And so something that we're very excited to help our partner source and implement and help alleviate their problem statements. Okay, so I think I touched upon our response, the startup response, VC's response, and a corporate response. So I think all these responses are slightly different, but they have some commonalities. And I think the idea of me sharing these responses is really to help you guys get a better understanding of what is happening in the market, right? I think one, we do have to understand and be realistic. Yes, COVID is happening. Ignoring COVID way and will not affect our company is not the way to go, right? COVID is happening. But no matter what kind of company you are, a startup, a corporation, a VC, someone looking to do something, there are some things that you can learn from each of the insights that we found from people in our ecosystem. And I think we just want to give you an outlook. So this outlook is not us trying to predict what's going to happen. Honestly, we cannot say when this is going to end. There isn't enough information. But what we can say is this outlook is basically a summary across all the ecosystem stakeholders, all the stakeholders in our ecosystem. A common thread or a red line that we can draw down. There will be a new normal, which will impact all businesses across all industries. But there are some things to keep in mind, no matter what your current situation is, right? Don't lose sight of the macro while focusing on the micro. So what this means is just that, as I mentioned earlier, you always have to be cognizant of what's happening on the macro. What happens on the individual level is always dictated by what happens on the macro market, big picture level. So it's always driven downwards and it's rarely going upwards. So even though your time and resources should be dedicated to fixing the micro, which is your day-to-day operations, making sure everything's okay, make sure there's someone that you can turn to give you insights on what's happening on the macro level. Also, be open-minded and explore all opportunities. Now, more than ever, everything goes out the window, right? Make sure you're open to implement anything. There's no idea that's too crazy. There's no question that's too stupid. Make sure we explore everything. Really, when exploring, don't just say that, oh, I thought about it. But when you're exploring something, use a scenario planning framework and really quickly drill down the key points of this idea and then quickly make a decision if it makes sense or not. The idea should be create a fast framework. Should we pursue it more? If it's okay, this decision by the task force, implement. But be as open-minded as possible and see and evaluate everything. Now also, the cycle for evaluating plans will change. So constantly evaluate, scrutinize, and reiterate your plans. I think a lot of companies do quarterly previously, even startups. Now might be the time to move to monthly, weekly, whatever works for your situation. The key idea here is that the window for evaluation is getting smaller and smaller, or the time frame for evaluation is getting smaller and smaller, and it will stay this way as long as there is so much volatility or variance in the market. And four, last but not least, be mindful of the drastic shift in consumer and market behavior. Even at now, which is I would categorize as still quite early stage of the COVID-19 crisis, there's already a dramatic shift in terms of consumer behavior and consumer spending habits. So these behaviors, when prolonged, will turn into habits, and these habits will become the new normal when the market does recover. So if you're in industries that are very, very B2C, very centered around consumer spending behavior or market behavior, make sure you're always mindful of what's happening and tweaking your product or service to account for this. Yeah, I think that's like an outlook that I want to give. Uh, that really covers what everything I really want to talk about today. But the last thing I want to end on, which is the most important thing, is the phrase "be realistic but hopeful." Right? Uh, and in those steps is also very important, right? So you have to be realistic first. Really evaluate what's going on with you, be it your company, yourself, your corporation, your investments, everything. Just be realistic. And to be realistic, you have to be open-minded, rid yourself of any preconceived bias or notions, and really understand all the information there is and make a very objective analysis of what's happening with you right now. And that will be your reality. From your reality, create scenarios or plans to deal with outcomes or things that might possibilities, right? And from those possibilities, every possibility should lead to a okay to good outcome, and that's where you have hope, and that's where the hope comes in, right? As I mentioned earlier, hope is the thing that really enables people across humanity, across history, to get to crisis. So don't lose hope. There will be an end. It's just there's things will be tough until we get to an end, but it's key to stay hopeful. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. I think we have one question from participant. The question is how we can keep maintain constantly analyze the market for changes. What else
Uh,
to prepare such a as tool and how to conduct?
So I think okay. First question is how can we constantly maintain and analyze the market, right?
Yeah.
What's very important is to read all the news. Obviously, a lot of news sites available. So if you're a startup, follow Tech in Asia, E27, so many, Deal Street. Also, r- consume a lot of the traditional media because that one will give you an idea of what's happening in the overall market and not just in the tech space. And then from there, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to find someone who's a expert in a market. So I mentioned that a lot of portfolio management that's happening from our end and other VCs is that they're providing their startups with the information. Oh, the market's going this way, the market's going that way. If you don't have that, try to consume as much information as possible across all the available news channels, and really from there make judgment. And obviously, if you're not an expert, your first analysis will not be the best, but what we found is in trying to understand the market, the more you do and practice, the better it gets. And what else tools and how to conduct. Uh, so tools, how to, okay. I guess I don't really understand this part. This tools relating to how to do analysis. I think it's just mostly on the news site. But a good way to look at market actually, if you are still doing it internally, is to see how your numbers change when implementing small plans on a week to week basis. That's a very good way to do market fit the other way around from your side up, right? Because consuming news, talking to people, talking to VCs is the top side down, right? Market and then how it relates to you. But from what you're doing and analyzing your historical numbers, you're able to also see what the market is like. Like if you push out this product or this service at this price and adoption is good, but then next week adoption lowers, then you understand that the market needs to be, or your product needs to be tweaked for this kind of market assumption.
Okay. And I have a one question for you. How corporate know if there's any solution available in the market during this situation?
So I think in general, I would
Mm-hmm.
say any solution is available. To any problem, a solution is already currently available. I think the hard part is about sifting through all the possible solutions. There's a lot of noise. So for one problem, just doing a quick online search might yield you about uh, 50 solutions. So it's important either to internally evaluate or uh, use someone to help evaluate the solutions first and then engage with them. I think I can only speak to what GK Plug and Play does, but this is a very core offering that we provide to our corporate partners. We tell them that we help them do all the grunt work of trying to find a solution. Our core
Mm-hmm.
team is to really take in venture team to take in all the solutions in the market and
Mm-hmm.
really understand which of these solutions can be implemented in Indonesia itself and for which partners. So we do it in two ways, right? One is a corporate comes to us and tells us they have a problem. The other way, which
Mm-hmm.
is the more proactive way, is actually our team actively goes out, finds
Mm-hmm.
solutions, and then analyzes whether these solutions can be used by our corporate partners, even though they haven't had that problem yet. So I think it's very key to have someone that can understand a solution and sift through the noise and really take out the hard part of it. And I would say it's something we do quite well here and globally.
Okay. Okay, we got some question from the attendees. Okay, I will this one. Do you think marketing budget is one that can be reduced, or do you think this is still essential?
This one is quite interesting, right? It's very case by case depending on the industry you're in. But I would say in certain cases, ramping up marketing might make sense. An example is like if you are doing something that's direct to consumer. Right now, the eyeballs of people are more on social media, more on online marketing channels. So if you are a D2C model, then that it might make sense for you to actually ramp up marketing there. However, if you're not in a industry that's thriving right now, yes, I would say marketing is a very important one to look up. Uh, I guess it's a follow up here. I can just do it.
Mhm.
While we still don't know when it's oh, okay. So yeah, this also depends on what kind of business you're in. If your sales funnel is really long, so let's say you're more like targeted on high ticket value items and not volume. It's about evaluating both. But if you are in this situation, I would uh, establish a new baseline. So keep that budget for a month and see how it performs before making any rash decisions. Because what we want to do here is to really make informed decisions based on what the market is telling us, not on our own assumptions. So to answer your follow up, keep that budget and then evaluate that budget on a faster basis and see if that is converting or not. But you really have to trace the breadcrumbs. So you now more than ever, it's important to know really your marketing spend. This $1 is actually leading to this $1 in sales. It's not time to do like high level combinations of all budgets here, sales is here. I can assume this. It's really important to trace everything and make sure that the information you're making a decision on is based on proper, valid information.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have two more questions. The first is from Roy Kosasi. He asks about, have you got an insight on online to offline service within your portfolio now? Where do the COVID-19 challenges basically cut down our supplies? They are service report.
Is it on online to
Have you
offline?
got an insight online to offline service within your
Uh,
portfolio now?
so I think maybe can you give me an example of what an online to offline that you're talking about is? So we do have some in our portfolio that do O2O, but it's more the other way around. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, we evaluated a company recently we talked to, which is trying to provide online uh, data analytics to offline stores. You know, like this is in retail actually. So you know how one of the key differences between online retail and offline retail is in online retail you're able to track everything. Offline retail, a lot of it's still based on some very general assumptions because you don't know, particularly this person buying is because of what. The market's still there, but if you are in retail in general, I would say that right now would be the time to evaluate scenarios on the very bleak side of the spectrum. So I think looking at your 30% revenue, 10% revenue scenarios and seeing uh, what you can do about it. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, I think it's answer the Stefanus question too. And the last question from Lucky. Yes. Since some VC are affected by this pandemic, which type of business or startup are they mostly investing in now? Or are they not spending at all? What do you think, Aaron?
So I think there's going to be spending. There's going to be investments for sure.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of big funds just raise money. So like a lot of the bigger ones, like okay, I'll mention a few like Sequoia, GGV Capital, the
Mm.
big funds. They're less affected by this. They're still looking to invest, and right now they might be more active than ever because there are more deals that they can get. For our side, we're also looking to invest, and what we're looking at is obviously what we have been looking at previously fintech, insurtech, food, agri, but also you'll see a shift towards more of the trending verticals that I mentioned earlier. So one of the big ones right now is telehealth, right? Telehealth is similar to HelloDoc, but any kind
Mm-hmm.
of model similar to that, I think we'll see some more demand or interest. Another one is direct to consumers because offline retail, I mean, with all the malls being shut and stuff, being able to sell directly leveraging logistics and the improvement in the infrastructure in Indonesia, we'll also see more demand. And third one is FMCG enablers. So this might mean like this is a variety, right? FMCG is so big, so anything that's fast-moving consumer goods, like things that are essentials for the home. It could be a solution that's B2B, where you're enabling people that are stuck at home to become sellers or become a warehouse of distribution. all the way to like the bigger ones that are e-grocers or e-supermarkets. Yeah, those will probably be looking to get a lot of money.
Okay. Okay. So I think we already done for the first session with Aaron. So we're going to the next session with Haikal Siregar. So guys, please stay tuned for in this channel. We're gonna going to the next session with Haikal Siregar. We will talk about industry and market outlook during the pandemic. Thank you, Aaron, for your insightful knowledge.
Thank you,
And
Fortune. Bye, guys.
yeah,
Remember,
bye,
be realistic
guys.
but hopeful. Bye.